set up the recording. And I will be continuing to let folks in as we get into the I'll get onto the webinar. But I thought what we would do is just kind of get a little introduction. We will also be, so I noticed a couple of new, a number of new registrants for this webinar. So I thought I'd just do a little introduction to the Clean Air Partnership. We're a charitable environmental organization, and really our modus operandi is to help municipalities advance the ambition and implementation of their clean air and climate change mitigation and resilience actions. We've been working on the home energy efficiency retrofit advancement for about actually a decade, on that one. And we know that it is a tough nut to crack, but we also know that it is an absolutely imperative nut to crack in terms of achieving our GHG reduction targets, and also all the other amazing co-benefits that are associated with building and accelerating our energy efficiency retrofit market, especially in the residential sector, which has been largely, trying to find a nice way of saying, ignored. The lack of supports that have come to the residential sector for good reasons in terms of how challenging that sector is regarding its decentralization, the small amount of retrofits to help build the business case in terms of the complexity of the residential retrofit and ensuring quality assurance, while also the challenges associated with finding the right contractors and building the overall retrofit ecosystem. From the commercial and industrial sector, they are their bigger energy users. They can often afford to bring in the consultants and experts to help them navigate this. As you can imagine, that is very different from the small residential customer who wouldn't be able to bring in kind of consultants, and they rely on their energy advisors and the energy audit to really set the stage for where they are right now and where they need to go, and the different possible pathways for them to move in that area. So we have Cindy Garreau here, and I'm going to just, go into. So we do have Cindy Garreau here from Executive Director at the CACEA, which is the Canadian Association of Consulting Energy Advisors. Thanks so much for joining us, Cindy. I really appreciate it. And then just before Cindy takes it on, I'm going to just do a land acknowledgements and share a video with you, which is one of my joys actually, of hunting down videos that are the right length to share with you in terms of education and awareness building on Indigenous knowledge and how we bring it into our work. And if I could just share a little bit of a personal insight on this one that I've been getting from reading, when I read Braiding Sweetgrass. I did want to kind of share that for the longest time, I always thought our solutions towards climate change is about addressing the technological changes that we need to advance, as well as the systems changes that we need to advance. And I'm not saying that's not important. That is absolutely critical in terms of where we need to go. But I've always kind of relied on the technology and the systems. And one of the things that really became apparent to me as I was reading Braiding Sweetgrass is that I've always struggled to try and understand how you bring Indigenous knowledge into, the environmental work that we do, which is very much geared towards peer review, science, evidence-based analysis. And one of the things that really became clear to me as I was reading this is that while, yes, we need to advance the technological and address the systemic changes that we need to do to advance a low carbon future, it's not only about the technology. And I think where I've really kind of gained some insights from Indigenous knowledge is that it's about how we bring our different mindset to our work. That how do we bring in a kind of philosophy, a thinking, a feeling way of understanding our interdependencies, not just amongst human beings in different countries and different places, but and individuals, but also across a whole bunch of the different species we are lucky enough to share this amazing planet with. And how do we bring that longer term thinking into our everyday thinking? And I really do believe that Indigenous knowledge holds an enormous amount of wealth of ways of looking at that and how we can bring that into our analysis. But one of the things I did want to kind of highlight on this one is there's in terms of the truth and reconciliation and opportunities for that. There's certainly the residential schools and the multi-generational impact that has had on Indigenous communities and Indigenous individuals in terms of their ability and resilience, and the trauma that has been created is something that we also need to take into consideration. So I wanted to share this one video with you, if you can indulge me on that one. Oh, I might have to stop sharing, sorry, because I might have not have shared with the video sound, which I need to do. So I'm going to do that now, sorry. And now I got to find where that tab is for here we go. And I'm going to
residential school. I remember the day walking toward that school with my mother, and it was a silent walk, and I was so afraid. 20 or 30 little kids herded into the showers, and then your body being painted in white liquid of some kind, your hair cropped and then doused in kerosene. And that was pretty traumatizing. The school held roughly 220 people, half boys, half girls, and we were segregated. If I was caught waving at my sister, there'd be a punishment for it. And so as a result of that segregation, I never really learned any social skills that young people should be learning as they grow up. From a religious and spiritual perspective, of course, the churches lobbied hard to convert Indigenous people, Aboriginal people. They said that we were heathen and pagan. They targeted language in those things we had learned through all of millennia to know where we came from, to know who we were, as something that had to be eliminated. Before that time, I lived in a place called Guayastums. They call it Guilford Island now. We harvested from the forest all of the animals that we needed to provide us sustenance. And from the ocean in front of us as well, all of the species of whales and mink and fish. And I had a connection to the environment around us. And so after having spent years in those schools, by the time we were ready to leave, most of us were pretty broken. Many of us, including myself, descended into addictions, alcoholism, and violence, and it was pretty difficult. Those schools lasted for over 100 years. There were over 150,000 little children. And the last school that closed in Canada was in 1996 in Saskatchewan. There was a history on this land that had been absolutely ignored. Nobody knew about the residential school legacy. Nobody knew about the intent of the Indian Act, the chronic challenges now facing Aboriginals. And we're starting to accept the idea that we have the shared history for which we all are responsible for. When the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report was submitted, I was in the room when Justice Murray Sinclair, the chair of the commission, denounced Canada. He had just recited a litany of intensive harms against Aboriginal people. And when he said, "Canada, you have committed cultural genocide," there was just a silence in that room, and then all of a sudden it erupted in euphoria. We said, survivors want an apology from the Prime Minister in the House of Commons. And I was there and I heard the words, "I'm sorry," and then I couldn't see because my eyes were just flowing with tears. I was so happy that somebody had said, "I'm sorry." Canada, by the way, is the only Western country that has had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So we're trying to look through a new lens. We and Canadians, we as an Aboriginal, we celebrate each other, everybody cheering each other up as we move toward a more equal, prosperous future for all of us. My name is Chief Robert Joseph, and I believe that truth and reconciliation is Canada.
So thank you so much for indulging me and providing me the time to share that video with you. It really is a joy for me to hunt down these things, and I feel like I'm learning something, and I feel like I feel like, I don't know, it just helps. It helps me to kind of feel like I'm learning something. And even when I do the land acknowledgements, helps me feel a little bit less superficial on those land acknowledgements. And they're just fun to share. So I really appreciate you indulging me and allowing me the time to do that. So I'm going to turn it over to Cindy. Cindy, thanks so much for joining us. And you should be able to share your screen.
There we go.
Perfect.
Can you see it okay? Great.
I can. And thank you so much for joining us and for coming to kind of give us everything we always wanted to know about EAs but was afraid to ask. And and we'll have a discussion following your presentation. And if people have any questions, you can put some questions in the chat. If there's something specific that you would like to ask, if you can just throw it in the chat. Cindy, you won't need to pay attention to the chat. If there's something that's specific to the slides, I'll draw your attention to it. Otherwise, we will have a discussion following your presentation.
Yeah, because chewing gum and walking can be a challenge for me, so I really appreciate that.
Me too. Me too.
First of all, Gabby, I want to thank you for that incredible land acknowledgement. It was from the heart, and that is what they're supposed to be. I have several Indigenous friends, and I've often asked them, you know, should I be doing land acknowledgements? And the response is only if it's from the heart, it should not be a token. And so that was from the heart, and I commend you on it and thank you. So Thanks. That's my acknowledgement of you and of our challenges beyond just, you know, the climate crisis. So now on a different note, I thought I'd introduce you all because there may be a few of you who are not aware of who CACEA is. Because we're a fairly young association. The association actually was created in reaction to the BC Step Code by a group of volunteers. And then other people throughout the country said, you know, this is something that the industry needs. Let's start an association. It was incorporated in 2017, but it was pretty volunteer driven. And so EAs are busy and they tried to do the best that they could as volunteers. And then in 2019, they hired me to be their executive director. And in the past couple of years, we've really made some great inroads. So CACEA's mission is to support a sustainable, and that's an intentional word, profession of successful and credible energy advisors. And we want to make sure that our members are credible, they're skilled, and that CACEA is seen to be a valuable partner with people such as yourself. Our members include energy advisors, but it also includes suppliers who are there to be a resource, a technical resource for members, and to also demonstrate their belief and commitment in the work that EAs do with other stakeholders and allies such as yourself, and those who are in the process of becoming energy advisors. While we right now don't have the bandwidth because I'm really the only person who works for CACEA, and I've only become full-time since July of last year, we really focus on those who are existing registered energy advisors. They're no longer called certified energy advisors for your reference, or registered, or REAs, just because we don't have the bandwidth. But that being said, we try to support those in the process as much as we can. So those people who are our members, our commitment to them is to provide them with knowledge and information through things like webinars that we hold almost every month, an e-newsletter. We have a supportive network, and we do that through an online member forum where people can post questions. We even have a trainee discussion board where those who are in the process of becoming EAs can ask questions, share resources. We have member forums and councils and committees and such. We're also here to provide a unified voice for the EA profession, which has not existed before. And in the past year with the Greener Homes program, that has been an extremely powerful benefit for the industry, not just EAs, but the EA community. And then we also offer discounts to our members for things like blower door equipment, training programs with some of our partners, and more. So on this slide deck, and I believe Gabby's going to share this, you have my contact information, and I encourage you to reach out at any time. The other thing I will mention is that, again, we had to sort of, based on bandwidth, pick a lane. So really we promote the building practices and programs that use like R2000, the EnerGuide process, the Energy Star for new homes, Net Zero Homes, and Build Green. We're not right now engaged with things like Passive House because, again, it's primarily bandwidth. So let's talk about what is an energy advisor. And I know that many of you probably know the next couple of slides, you're probably aware of what I'm going to say, but there may be a few of you who aren't familiar, and or perhaps I'm just reinforcing what you know. So the really key thing for an energy advisor, and why so many programs use them, is that they're here to provide a third-party verification and rating of a home's energy efficiency. And they provide that as an impartial party. Their training and expertise is on energy efficiency as well as building science. And that's a really important part of their knowledge and what they do, because they use their expertise to help building professionals and homeowners make good, informed decisions. And so, Gabby, you kind of alluded to that earlier. We EA support home labeling programs, and I've mentioned like EnerGuide, Energy Star for new homes, CHBA's Net Zero Ready and Net Zero Homes, to say the least, because that EnerGuide rating system is a consistent and recognized program. Because EAs are seen to be impartial, and because of their expertise with modeling and evaluation, their work is recognized in building codes nationwide, as well as compliance pathways for the application of supplementary energy codes and other performance pathway programs and incentives. And so these are actual pictures of some of CACEA members in action doing some work. So I wanted to just share the fact that EAs are highly skilled and competent professionals. And I'm using the word professional because I think sometimes that is forgotten. They have to know a lot. So they have to be aware of the bylaws and standards, codes and regulations. They have to understand energy, resiliency, efficiency, IT, geometry, math and modeling. The big one that sometimes is overlooked is their focus on relationships and on communication. And I think that's an area that, you know, I want to address a little bit later. And the other thing that's really important is that whole building science, whole house as a system, which is really important. They're also kind of like forensic scientists of going into a home. Yes, they're there to model and rate the efficiency of a home, but sometimes they can see some additional problems that the homeowner may have missed. Right now, energy advisors, when they're registered through EnerCan, they can do both existing homes and new homes through their licensing. Some, though, focus on one, some focus on the other, and some focus on both. I just put this slide up just to give you an indication as to who the EA connects with. You know, they interact with builders, homeowners, trades, suppliers. So they're kind of in the hub of this whole Part 9 residential section. And when I put this together, it's like, wow, they really can be engaged with a whole bunch of different people and can bring a lot of that engagement, networking knowledge to a variety of people. So this is an area, and actually this is a really important slide, because I think that there is the relationship between an EA, service organization, and EnerCan. It's not linear and it's not simple, because there are many different ways that they can be, you know, there are many different ways to skin a cat, as they say. So as I mentioned before, EnerCan has established energy efficiency protocols, which are a set of common standards and benchmarks for evaluating a home's efficiency. And then you can provide a label using that process. And that's the EnerGuide rating system It's also called ERS. And that rating system is also used for Energy Star for new homes, again, an NRCan program. Because this is a nationally recognized rating system, it's really become the standardized home energy performance rating tool. So that's why you as a municipality and other stakeholders are going to use this as sort of a protocol for the foundation of your programs and requirements. So a service organization, this is an independent organization that is licensed by NRCan to use their official marks, software, and to deliver NRCan's home labeling initiatives. So they're not part of NRCan, and they're required to adhere to a set of ethics and standards and are required to pass additional SO required exams. Some of those are like, quality assurance exams and such. The SO's responsibility is to support EAs, providing things like field supervision, ensuring quality control, and then submitting the corresponding energy model to NRCan. Only the SOs submit the files to NRCan, not the EAs, in order to get that InterGuide rating system. So the EAs are the ones who submit their files through the service organization. That being said, there are different relationships with the service organizations. So the first one shows that some service organizations have their own employees, or they have subcontractors, and sometimes they have a bit of both. And so that employee is directly connected to that service organization. They submit the service organization may give them the work, or the contractor, subcontractor may bring the work to the service organization. There are other energy advisors who are self-employed. And so their relationship to the service organization is only really more of an affiliation. They've got an arrangement to submit their files to that service organization. EAs can be affiliated with more than one service organization. And that often happens with people like, for example, who are self-employed. Some service organizations require that you only submit through them, and others are just happy to, support in different jurisdictions, because there may be some service organizations that, for example, they don't have the qualifications to perhaps provide the net zero label, and somebody else does. The other sort of business relationship is that there is an EA company. The EA company is not a service organization. They are a company that have employees who are EAs, plus maybe other, consultants, and they do have other business practices. They could also have additional contractors, similar to what we saw in number 1. The EA company is the one then, the EA does their work, and they have somebody within their company who submits the files to the service organization. So again, it's similar to 2 in that there's just a relationship with the service organization to submit those files. The last one is that you could have an EA, you could be a contractor who contracts to both a service organization and an EA company. And again, the files still have to go through that service organization. So the relationship with the service organization and the EA is quite varied. The service organization takes, sometimes charges the EA for the files, sometimes, and that there's no set sort of costing, if you will, practice for that. Some do a percentage, some do a fee, some are very generous, and some not so much. So it's really challenging when people say, how much can you make as an EA? Well, it depends. It depends on, how you want to work within the industry. So I hope that I may reference this a little bit later, because some of you may organize programs that are affiliated with specific service organizations. And the challenge with that is that you may be having capacity issues because you're not enabling, by only using certain service organizations, you may not be enabling EAs who don't work with that service organization to support your program. So it's just something to think about. And we can talk about that more later. So I'm sure you all know about the value of the inner guide. I'm not really going to go over this very much. I just had this here just in case, because the purpose of this label is to verify the efficiency. It compares it to a typical new home. It helps to guide the renovations or upgrades, but it also quantifies the energy savings. And as you all know, data is everything. So there's a lot of conversation this past year about we need more EAs and how do they become EAs. And unfortunately, when the announcement was made about investing in adding more EA jobs, although well-intended, Minister O'Regan kind of didn't really portray it in the correct way, because it's not just a matter of taking a couple courses and writing an exam. Yes, there is an exam. Yes, there are courses out there, but there's a lot of information these guys need to know. Depends on your background, depends on, you know, your interests and things, and how, and usually from what I'm hearing from our members, and I will quantify, I am not an energy advisor, so, but I obviously have spoken to quite a few of them. And to really know your stuff, it can take a year or more to be a really good, experienced energy advisor. Right now, the way people become EAs is a little sideways. We recognize that as an association, but we're just trying to get through some of the roadblocks and challenges that the Greener Homes program has presented. Good problems, absolutely. But you know, that's a whole other conversation, perhaps over wine. So I put these together just to sort of help people, because I get a lot of questions, how do you become an EA? So I put this sort of flow chart, if you will, together. Often people are, you know, they do have construction building knowledge. They've been engaged in the building sector. They're looking for something else to do. STEM cells, you know, that's science, technology, engineering, and math are really helpful. Analytical is really helpful. Environmentally focused, because you know, a lot of these people are doing this out of a passion to reduce the impact of our current climate crisis. They're lateral thinkers, they're curious. That's where the forensic comes in. But they do have to have pretty good communication skills, and it's not just written, but it's actually talking to people. They need to be people oriented. And why a lot of people like this job is that there is a flexible work schedule, so they can work in different ways and such. To challenge the exam, you don't have to take any courses. You could challenge the exam, book a date through Yardstick and challenge an exam. You can do self-study. NRCan has the competencies noted on their website. You can take training programs. The ones that we have sort of highlighted are with the CACEA, the Canadian Institute of Energy Training, or Blue House Energy. The difference between the two, Blue House is online and you can do it on your own time. CACEA is more classroom. So that's really the difference. The reason why we promote those is because they're nationally focused. Some SOs and some EA companies will also do training and mentoring for that. So you've done some of the self-study, you've gone through it all. Now you challenge the NRCan Foundation exam. I will say again, you don't have to do the exams in this order. It is, from what I've heard, recommended that it's ideal to do the foundation exam first, because that's really about building science, building and construction components and such. Okay, so now you pass that exam, we go on to the EA house exam. And this is the content that really goes into the EA tasks, their responsibilities, the code of ethics, the impartiality, the rating system, and using HOT 2000. And NRCan uses HOT 2000 as its modeling software, and that's where all the data is housed, as you all probably know. Again, you can do it through self-study and just challenge it on your own. You can have a mentor, somebody else could be training you, or you could take training courses, but you will, even if people take those training courses, there's still an element of self-study that needs to happen. Okay, now you pass that exam. Great. Now you have to affiliate, if you haven't done so already, with an EA company or a service organization. And you have to decide, you're going to be an entrepreneur or you're going to be an employee. Because the other thing you have to do is you have to do your on-site blower door training. And then you have to also do a certain number of probationary files. The number of probationary files can vary depending on who you're working with. However, if somebody says that they became a registered energy advisor having done 2 probationary files, that should be a big red flag. Typically it's 6 to 10. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. Even if somebody is highly experienced in the building sector, you know, everything is not straightforward. Modeling in HOT 2000, there are a lot of nuances and challenges with that. So you're doing your blower door, you're doing your pre, your post, and the difference between an E or N with the post is it existing or new? So once you've gone through all those probationary files, you passed your exam, the SO is the one who has to submit the paperwork to NRCan in order for that EA to get their license. And that license, that number that the EA receives is connected to the service organization. So actually with CACEA, we require every year with our membership renewal, a service organization verification letter to show that our members are in good standing with their service organization. So that's kind of the process. And this could take 3 months to 6, 7 months. Where there can be a bit of a challenge is in this section here, because it's finding that service organization or EA company who will mentor the EA to do that work. In some jurisdictions, there is a bit of there right now, because there are quite a few people who've done courses and they're having challenges finding that service organization or EA company to do their probationary files. Because for your reference, to really mentor one EA during this process takes about 20 hours of an experienced energy advisor to do. So that's a significant investment of time and effort. It also potentially takes that person out of providing, you know, the services for things like greener homes. So it's quite an investment, and then there's also how much work is available in a certain community. They may say, like, if we help all these people, they may not have enough work. So it's not always black and white. So once somebody becomes a registered energy advisor, right now they're able to do existing homes and new homes and do the EnerGuide label, just the EnerGuide label. If they want to do other things like Energy Star for new home, there is another qualification for that. If they want to do MURBs, or the multi-unit residential buildings, there's a different qualification for that. If they want to provide the CHBA Net Zero program, they have to go work with a CHBA recognized service organization and go through a specific training for that. So there are additional credentials that they are looking for. Some people also go on to do additional building science training. They look at, you know, they look at IDP facilitation, quality assurance. So they do, you know, the attention to ongoing education is really important. And we at CACEA believe so strongly in this that we're going to be launching, I believe, we're hoping for June, that our members, right now it'll be voluntary, but we will be starting a continuing education credit program for our members, requiring them to maintain a certain amount of continuing education each year, or over 2 years. We're still working that out, so that we can demonstrate that people who are members of CACEA have good knowledge, experience, are committed to ongoing learning, because those are the kinds of EAs that, are not just doing it the way we've always done it, because things do change. So that's kind of it's not a long presentation on what EAs do, but I do want to just highlight a couple things. And this is maybe where we can have a bit of a discussion. EAs, as you know, they're part of your program promotion and delivery. So as a result of that, it's really important that you consider, what do they have to know in order to communicate your program requirements to a homeowner? What do they have to do to deliver that program for both the homeowner's needs and also for your needs? There are some initiatives sometimes, and the Greener Homes is an example, where it's very administrative heavy. And you have to think that these are people who are a business owner and their time is money. And so it is that one extra step that you're asking them to do. To you may not seem much, but it could be a couple hours of work, and they're not necessarily getting paid for that. Right now, things like the Greener Homes program, I'll use that as an example, that's really only providing for a basic EnerGuide rating process. So that is the pre-audit, the modeling and report, and the post-audit. And that is the bare bones of what an EA can do. Unfortunately, many people look at energy advisors as a means to an end. And we mentioned that they help to verify, has the work been done? And that is absolutely very important. How successful has it been? It provides you all with data on, the improvements that have been made on the greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera. But EAs can do more than that. And I've been in several conversations where municipalities and other program people, part of the challenge is an EA for the amount of money right now that, say, the Greener Homes grant is offering. That money, not all of it, first of all, remember, goes to the EA. A good portion of it may go to that service organization, and the EA is only getting a portion. What that portion is varies with service organizations and EA companies. So there's not enough time for the EA to have those important conversations with homeowners. There's only enough time to do the pre-audit, maybe a bit of conversation before, do the modeling, create the RUR, which is the renovation upgrade report, and then come back and do the post-audit to ensure that the homeowner has complied with the program requirements. So what happens, though, is that the homeowner gets this report, which says, here's your deficiencies, here's where you need to really make improvements. And they put together, here's where they have their wording for what needs to be upgraded. But there's no guidance to the homeowner as to how they can, what's the best way to move forward? Because windows and heat pump may be on there. We're going to use that as an example. If the windows are really leaky and they aren't necessarily attended to well, then the size of the heat pump that the homeowner may get may not be the right size if afterwards they change their windows. So the EA can help guide the homeowner if there is time built into programs, or if the homeowner agrees to pay a little bit more, candidly, to have that extra time with the homeowner to go over the report, to put a plan together to see how they can move things forward. This sort of thing is kind of happening already in the new home world. So a lot of EAs build relationships with the builders, and then they are their advisor to how they can have better performing homes. EAs also at times interface with contractors and help the contractors understand some of the challenges, because they are looking at the whole house. The house as a system. Whereas sometimes contractors, even deep energy retrofits, they're only looking at their one component. So the EAs can help, and again, make sure that all the pieces fit really well together. Many of our members, and many of you may already work with them, can also be consultants and advisors on your program design, because they're building science experts. They're on the ground. They've seen and done it all. Many of our members have been around for 10, 15 years, and they've seen programs come and they've seen programs go. And so maybe there's some elements of best practices that can be there. The one nice thing about an association like CACEA is because we're national, we may also hear about things that are going on in one part of the country that you may not have thought of, or we know it's happening here, and therefore you might want to talk to that person. I think, I've made that connection just recently with between the city of Vancouver and the city of Toronto with a program that they're trying to put together so that you guys can share best practices, because it doesn't seem that forum exists, although perhaps I haven't heard about it yet. And EAs can also help with your research practices, research initiatives, pilots, that sort of thing. And maybe that's where we can also help as an association. So Gabby, that's kind of my pontificating, and I'm happy to see if you have any other questions or thoughts or concerns or whatever from the group.
Thanks so much, Cindy. I really appreciate that presentation. And I'm learning a little bit more of the structure with regards to EA and service organizations, and then NRCan, because that's something that I wasn't able to wrap my head around before. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's not straightforward. And that's the challenge, is that it's not straightforward. And in fact, with the Greener Homes program, and we have a few people, I think, from NRCan here, when the program was first being considered, one of the things that we said is energy advisors need to be listed, not just service organizations, because the homeowners won't know what a service organization is. And again, not all EAs work for a service organization, they work with. And so this is a discussion that we're currently having, and there may be some changes pending. But again, I encourage municipalities, when you're putting your programs together, that you keep that in mind, because it can have an impact on the interest and capacity for delivering your programs.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I know one of the things that we've been considering as we've been kind of going through and working with municipalities on designing their potential retrofit program is the different kind of definitions that people have in different sectors across what's the energy concierge, what's the energy coach. And I did want to kind of highlight one of the key things that we've kind of learned through this process is there's different roles associated with it that on how the definition comes to it. And they're all getting lumped together as the energy concierge, energy coach, or whatever they kind of get identified as. But I did want to kind of highlight, so there's one kind of role of the energy concierge coach, which is more of a program administration role, which is like manage.
Very important.
Yeah, and you help kind of identify the customers, help them navigate whether this type of program is something that's going to be suited for them, or if other programs are a better fit for them. What are the requirements of the program? What's the process for the program? So that's kind of, we call that the kind of program, like that program concierge, that kind of admin.
Absolutely, very important, because otherwise, and this Greener Homes had this challenge too, because suddenly all these people who really didn't weren't qualified for the program were applying and then being frustrated when they were turned down. So I think that's very valuable.
And then there's a second role, kind of the intermediate role that I kind of highlight, which is more about the kind of helping the customer through the retrofit process, which is like, how do you find your contractors? How do you kind of sequence them? Which, that kind of analysis that you kind of help in terms of it. And then there's the homeowners who really need the help, especially those who are going for deep energy retrofits or fuel switching. And I definitely think that those customers need a little bit more of that technical EA expertise brought to them. And I remember when Brent Copperson from Infall Ecology Center highlighted the German retrofit program, which not only includes incentives, which I thought were brilliant, the way they did the incentives, which is all performance-based. So if you achieve a 50% reduction, they almost write off 50% of your loan. If you receive and it's like a graduated scale, that more of your loan gets written off, the deeper your GHG reductions are. But in addition to the performance standards incentives they had, what I thought was brilliant is that they had a hand-holding incentive associated with it. And for those who were going deeper, they were given more hours of a technical energy advisor experience and hand-holding and guidance to help them navigate that. And it's something that I think is really that we can learn a lot from. I know we're still at the earlier stages in terms of our program delivery and rollout than they are in Germany, but we have a lot to learn from other jurisdictions that are further ahead on us.
Right. Well, way back when that, you know, bonus for the better you did.
What I'm also going to be doing is we've set up a Menti. Just if you can just bear with me, I'm going to bring, I got to share my screen now.
And, you know, if I may add, Gabby, if you all think that they're, you know, what you're seeing even within the EA community, because, you know, if you're seeing that they're, and I suggest this not just today, but in the future, if you think that there are some things that would help EAs be more, say, better professional, or there's some skills lacking, whatever.
Yeah.
That's why CACEA is here.
Absolutely, yes. And I will put your contact information in the email. And I apologize, I just realized I got a typo, realted. But
You're excited.
I've put in the Menti in the chat. And also, I'm going to just throw it up to any folks who would like to just unmute. There's a number of different ways you can ask your question. You can just unmute and ask Cindy your question. You can put it in the chat, or you can add it into this Menti, and that's going to be kind of like, that's totally anonymous. But if you have any questions, please, this is the perfect time to ask them.
So while people are thinking, I do want to let you all know a couple of the things that we're focusing on right now. One of the areas is the integrated design process facilitation training. So we have a pilot right now in BC, and we believe that EAs are best suited to facilitate discussions with a renovator, a builder, homeowner, and bringing in all of the people who might be involved in the building at the design phase. So this applies also to the deep energy retrofit. And we're trying, you know, we want to have a standardized way of doing these IDP sessions so that it can be compared, and municipalities may want to, you know, leverage some of that information. Fortis BC is offering a grant to builders for taking on the services of a facilitator or other consultants. We are putting together, and it'll be launching in May, June, we're just figuring the date now, a retrofit refresh training program where we're going to be providing some best practices on how to do existing home audits and sharing that information, because there are a lot of new EAs over the past year, and there isn't always a lot of field experience with that. So we're providing that expertise. There are also, the new difference between a new home audit and an existing home audit is very, very different. Yeah. And so there may be people in the new home world that want to tap into these opportunities because they are coming. I will say, in my conversations with Enercan, I had a conversation this morning, and it was great, but I do think that the CMHC loan is going to be here soon. And so that's something that's quite exciting and a great opportunity, but it is going to add on to potentially the burden's not the right word, but the pressure on the EA community, because they're still trying to satisfy some of the Greener Home Grant uptake, which was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, the number of people that wanted to take advantage of it. Yeah.
And it's exciting too. I mean, this is all about kind of growing the market. We know that there's going to be growing pains. Yeah. There always are growing pains. It's inevitable. But the question is, like, our ability to address those growing pains are is so much better if we all work together and share across the different stakeholders who are absolutely critical to building this retrofit ecosystem. And after
Right.
a lot of neglect to the residential sector for a decade, it's super exciting to finally get some critical mass in programming and serving supports for that residential sector. And
Right.
not only just the incentives, but the financing and the customer handholding and support, which, we all know is absolutely critical. Any homeowner
Yeah.
who's gone through an energy efficiency retrofit knows that it's taking on a part-time job to manage that one.
Yeah. And we're looking right now too, what tools can we equip our members with to assist homeowners with some of that pathway. And we also want to, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we want to ensure that our members are, and the focus is on our members, but also the EA community, that they have the skills. And so we're looking at what kind of upskilling is, should they be having. There's a lot of new technologies that are coming out there, right? There with heat pumps and air sourced hot water and such, and the technologies, it's changing regularly, and it can cause some confusion and challenges with homeowners, with with contractors and such. You mentioned at the very beginning in your acknowledgement about the importance of, like, one of the things that we have to do is that long-term thinking and the behavioral change, and that's a big challenge. And so that's something that I'm thinking about, is how can EAs help with that behavioral change management kind of process.
And so we have a couple of questions. One question is, how would a municipality better understand the level of energy advisor available within their community? Is there any kind of is there a place they can go to know the number of energy advisors that is available within their kind of, catchment time period, for knowing where they're at present and how much of an issue the EA bottleneck may or may not be for their community?
Yeah, that's a tough one right now because, again, NRCan, I think they're also wrestling with that. And I mean, we have our member directory, but we certainly do not represent the 13. Right now, I think there's over 1,300 EAs who are registered through NRCan, but not all of them are also doing existing homes.
Gotcha.
So that's something to consider. And there are, some EAs, the challenge is EAs will travel anywhere, but then that potentially adds to the cost, right?
Yeah.
I'm not aware right now of of sort of saying, okay, I'm in this area and our wait time is 3 months, because it varies, right? It's and to be and NRCan was saying, I wonder if we could ask the SOs to do that. The SOs, again, you're asking for a business to take time that they're not getting paid for to do something, like to track their, what their availability is, and to post it and make it available. And maybe I'm just being too direct, but that's a challenge because they don't have time. They're just scheduling.
Gotcha. So there isn't like a one kind of stop shop at this point in time, but it has been recognized as an issue, and there is kind of conversations for how to address and build transparency in the numbers. Is that correct?
But the challenge too is think about that business model I showed you, because you have one EA who's working with multiple SOs. You have an EA company. You have an SO company that has so it's not, again, it's because it's not linear. How do you?
Another example of decentralization in the residential sector. That's an issue for us to solve.
Yeah, and I don't, I think there still has to be a respect for free enterprise.
Yeah.
So making it, creating it becoming too linear can also be problematic.
Okay. And then some of the folks other mentioned that the opportunity to engage more with homeowners to discuss retrofit opportunities and effectiveness, and identifying that as a gap at present. We know that it doesn't come cheap, but we also know how absolutely critical it is, especially at the early stages of this market, when we don't have enough of the building science expertise within the contractors and trades that we need to have. And we will eventually get to, but we have to invest in that capacity building.
Right, right.
And then
I will
go ahead.
So I was going to say, Gabby, that there are some people who are, it's interesting. We have a couple of members who are participating in greener homes, but they are only dealing with the homeowners who are willing to pay that extra. So they're dealing with 20% of the people that come to them, because it's not worth their while and their expertise to help that person just for the means to an end label.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm trying to look for ways that we could perhaps provide more passive information for the homeowner beyond just CRUR that, maybe CACEA members only have or whatever. So it's a challenge. And even if it's only, and that's why I suggested that percentage rebate might be with a cap, might be a way around that. I think it's also how we communicate the EA value proposition to the homeowners, because right now they're seen as, quite frankly, and many people think of them as label makers. They're a means to an end. They're an expense. They don't see the value. They don't see the longer term value of making a good decision. People are right now, when the program is very equipment replacement heavy, you're not getting what you're really trying to do. And so greener homes, there are a lot of people wanting to slap on solar right now. I'm going to get solar panels. There's a reason why CHBA, when you have a net zero ready home, there's a reason why to get from net zero ready to net zero, the last thing is solar panels.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. Solar panels shouldn't be the first. And then when people say, why do you have to have an E if you're just having the solar panels? Because maybe that EA is going to come in and have an opportunity to ask the homeowner, what are you trying to achieve? If it's a good EA, and there are not all EAs are necessarily good or knowledgeable, that they might say, you know what, a better investment might be this instead.
Yeah.
And then we have better reduction in our GHG, and than the solar panel. Absolutely.
Yeah. And definitely. And then there was a question just regards to elaboration more on the program concierge. So I did wanted to highlight, there's always a lot of different types of customer handholding that is going to need to be part of these programs. The program concierge is just the customer handholding, but not necessarily the technical expertise associated with building science. It's more about the program and which incentives are out there and which financing are out there, the pros and cons of different programs that speak directly to what the customer is trying to achieve with the energy efficiency or retrofit or work that they're trying to do. So you don't necessarily need to have that technical expertise. It's more the customer skill sets that were associated with helping a homeowner figure out what program makes the most sense for them and helping them through the overall process associated with the retrofit, as opposed to the technical information on which measures and sequencing of measures make the most sense for their particular home, which you need the EA technical experience to ensure that you don't get unintended consequences associated with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very important. And so therefore, I think it's important as to what you would name that position, because you can confuse. If you say energy concierge, then there could be a confusion as to what that means. But that's just my personal opinion, not Cindy, with CACEA. There was a quick question I noted in the chat. See, I can chew gum and walk, about poaching REAs from others. With any job, there's always going to be a, hey, why don't you come work for us? And there are some people, have tried very overtly to say, hey, come work for us, we're great. And that's not necessarily so good if you're doing it like through an e-blast, because that has happened at the beginning of Greener Homes. But EAs, it's like any business. You're going to go to wherever is the best fit for you.
Yeah.
And as I kept coach EAs, if you're looking for a service organization, you have to think about, again, what is your business model? What kind of support do you need or don't need? What are you looking for? Are you looking for training? Are you looking for somebody to go to, mentoring, all of that? If or not, because again, what are your values and what are their values? It's the same thing with any job.
Yeah.
Even if they are an affiliate, you still want to make sure that what is their reputation, because it's your reputation too.
Absolutely. Another quick question.
I will say, Gabby, sorry, one other thing I will say. What's really important to remember is that EAs are not supposed to, and you all know this, I'm sure, recommend any product material over another. There are some EAs that are being pressured right now with the Greener Homes program to promote. Certain contractors are trying to push EAs to do promote certain products. There are some EAs that are doing it and such. So again, it's a challenging world out there, and we through CACEA, that's something we don't support. And the one thing that we do have is we have a discipline process. So if a CACEA member, if you hear or that a CACEA member has done something that perhaps that violates NRCan's code of conduct, then we can investigate it and decide if or not we think that they should be a member of CACEA. So our members is perhaps another layer of credibility. Our members have to also have errors and emissions insurance, which is not a requirement of NRCan.
Right, perfect. And then just a quick question in terms of the typical horizon for return on investment timeframe for EA pre-assessments. If the homeowner's goal is utility bill reduction, do EA reports kind of bring in the carbon tax increases over time into that return on investment? And let's say, for example, in a heat pump, does it go into that type of detail in terms of the roadmap? And the return on investment and the payback period for that particular home?
It's a great question, and I have no idea because I'm not an EA. I do know that we are, NRCan is coming out with their embodied carbon calculator. So, I think that that's something we're going to be training EAs on as well. And they're hoping that can also be used for the retrofit world. But I think it depends on the interest and knowledge of an energy advisor, because maybe not all EAs have that expertise and knowledge. But it's a great question. Thanks.
And I will admit, I don't have a wealth of experience on this one, but from the energy audit reports that I've seen, there is a gap between the energy advisor report that goes to the homeowner and what we kind of identify as like the epitome of what we're trying to help the homeowner do, which is a roadmap towards net zero over time that is bringing in their asset renewal time frame as well. So there, at present, from what I understand, is the energy audit report that goes to the customer is more geared towards specific individual measures and not the house as a whole. So there is some improvements that could be brought to the energy advisor report that can help kind of translate it from a kind of measure specific or measure identification in silos to an overall house as a system roadmap towards zero.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. And I think that I would like to put out there that perhaps this is something we could look at almost as a round table, because the report is actually NRCan's report, right? And so perhaps we could look at, are there ways to, and or work with municipalities, are there ways that we could tailor a report or something? So I'm happy to have continued conversations on this, because maybe there are some opportunities that we could make. Obviously there's always room for improvement.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure, especially in this sector.
Yeah.
Which is a very challenging one. Are there any other questions for Cindy?
I'm going to put in, Gabby, if it's okay, I'm going to put in my email.
Absolutely.
And
I
then
will
that
also
way,
provide it for folks in the proceedings. I'll CC you in the proceedings so that people can reach out to you if that's okay.
okay, great. Make sure I'm spelling it right. Because, you know, I'm happy to have chats with any of you about programs that you're thinking about. You know, let us be involved maybe in the planning stage so that we can guide you so that everybody is successful. You know, that's what it's all about. It takes a village, right?
Absolutely. And certainly if, you know, moving forward in terms of as the municipalities gain more experience, and the municipalities and the various partners that are working with them on developing and delivering their retrofit programs, I really do believe that kind of ongoing conversation and interactive dialogue across the different stakeholders will be critical to addressing a lot of the challenges we face in this sector.
Right, right. All right.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Cindy. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to provide a little bit of the Energy Advisor 101 background. I really appreciate that. And thank you all to all of you for joining for today. We will be sending you out via email the proceedings where the recording will be, can be shared. The PDF from Cindy's presentation will be available. And also please feel free to share that with others in your municipality who will or should be interested in this very important topic. And thank you very much again, Cindy. And thank you to all of you for joining us. And I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Have a great day and enjoy this beautiful spring day.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.